When it comes to iOS and macOS and tvOS, I don't have a huge wish list. There's like little nitpicky things here and there, but iPadOS, that is a different story. I think it's going to be one of the biggest years for the iPad, especially when it comes to software at WWDC this year. So I wanted to make one video where I just accumulate all of my ideas and write my sweet little wish list to Tim Cook. And if I'm nice this year, hopefully he will achieve all of these things. Santa's not real, but Tim Cook is. Let's begin. So first of all, the iPad, now with the Magic Keyboard case, has all of the necessary hardware for it to be a fully fledged laptop. And typically the only things that are keeping people from using this thing as their dedicated laptop compared to a MacBook or a desktop they're comfortable with is software limitations. So that's why iPadOS 14, or is it iPadOS 2? I don't really know what to call it. It's kind of based off iOS, but at the same time it's a new platform. So I'm just going to call it the next generation of iPadOS is a pivotal moment for the iPad's future. So in the last generation, we got a whole lot of stuff. We got external drive support, we got mouse support, and now fully fledged cursor support endorsed by Apple with the Magic Keyboard case. Safari now brings down the desktop view of websites. So within 1 year, the iPad has made a whole lot of progress. And my hope is that in 2020, it can make just as much progress, if not even more so. So the first big one that I want to get out of the way from the beginning is external monitor support. Now, I know you can plug in monitors to your iPad and it will basically mirror the display and put it up on the screen at a typical 4:3 aspect ratio. There's even some third-party apps that utilize the external monitor by letting you preview your video timeline while editing on the iPad, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about making it more MacBook-like so that when you plug into an external monitor, you actually have a second screen that the iPad can optimize for, maybe put like your home screen on the iPad and then put your second row of apps on the display, which can scale to different resolutions and different aspect ratios, because right now it just puts 4:3 on everything and the portrait mode throws it off and all that kind of stuff. So external monitor support, I'm not saying it needs to be, as complicated as macOS is, because they have all kinds of text reformatting and different arrangements and stuff like that. And because the iPad Pro still only has one USB-C port and the other one can be used for power but not data, just allow it to support one extra monitor at a time and just kind of re-optimize iPadOS to be capable of outputting to multiple screens so that you can have an app running on one and a different app running on the other. And because it supports mouse and keyboard now, you can just switch between the two. We've got that fully fledged cursor support. And it would be cool if with the Magic Keyboard case you could plug in so the iPad has power and then via the onboard USB-C port output to a video display and just kind of have your iPad convert into a desktop type situation when you want to use a dedicated mouse and keyboard. And then when you're ready to go, you can unplug both the cables and take the iPad as you need to. If you just want to edit on a larger display for photography or audio or video, which brings me into my next point. I hope iPadOS comes with a suite of new Pro applications. Now, there are some leakers suggesting that Final Cut, Logic, and Xcode are coming to the iPad soon, but we don't necessarily know if they're going to be, the fully fledged versions that we have on macOS. So it could be a tuned down basic format of Final Cut or Logic that does, 90% of the same stuff, but in my opinion, that would still be really, really capable and much better than the default apps Apple has now on the iPad. So bringing more productivity workflow that will more than likely have to be scaled down or minimized in certain ways would be great, and I would very much appreciate it. So the Pro application suite should be, the default, and I know it's not really something that impacts iPadOS because these are more than likely going to be paid programs. They don't just come with the iPad when you buy it because Apple would lose too much money on that, and Final Cut Pro costs $300 on the Mac, so if it costs something on the iPad, I think that's fair. Just not sure if it's going to be like, you own Final Cut on the Mac, you instantly get it for free on the iPad. I don't know. That's probably how it should be, but knowing Apple, it's probably not going to be that way. But even if it's $50 to $100, if it works well, I'm willing to pay for it. So the next big thing I hope they can add to iPadOS is some redesigns to the home screen, even more so than we already got, because in its current form, it's very much built for touch, which is good. I don't think it needs to change that drastically, but 9to5Mac reported that iOS 14 would get some type of of redesigns for the home screen with widgets and maybe more of a grid list view, which I think would make a lot more sense on the iPad than it would on the iPhone. If there's more people using a trackpad and a keyboard with their iPad, then keeping the apps in a row and close together and easy to scroll through might make a whole lot of sense. I'm not saying they need to change the default. I think if most iPads are going to be used with touch primarily, it makes sense to leave it the way it is. Maybe let some more widgets be pinned to the home screen, but allowing some options out there for people who want to use the iPad more as a laptop than they do a tablet would just improve the fluidity and the capability of the iPad as a whole. My next big request is adding more third-party support to things. So USB-C port is fairly capable. You can do a lot of stuff on that. Again, we have external drives, power, video output, audio output. You could do a lot of things through that port, but I think it would be awesome if we saw some more capabilities of using external cameras. Like, this is a very specific use case, I know, but I do a lot of live streaming both on Twitch and YouTube, and it would be really awesome if via that USB-C port we could plug in our external cameras, whether they be Blackmagic, Canon, or Lumix, and use Elgato cam links to actually do fully fledged live streaming off the iPad and not be forced to use, you know, the front-facing or rear-facing cameras. So I'm sure there's a bunch of small in-between capability things you can think of that the iPad just simply can't do because no one's really using it for that yet. But if they have demos on stage with iPadOS, I think that would be a great one, that it's like, hey, barely any other tablet is capable of doing this, and ours, you know, you can plug in, have external microphone, external camera, live streaming software that works really, really well and is optimized since the iPad has very, very good thermals because there's no fans in it, but still able to run things at incredibly high speeds thanks to the A12X or A12Z chip, depending on which iPad Pro you have. And I know a lot of the things I'm talking about today are specifically for the iPad Pro with Magic Keyboard case. When it comes to the rest of you using, you know, the $300 iPad, I mean, what could we add to everything else? Well, I think keyboard shortcuts could be drastically improved, especially when it comes to the Magic Keyboard case. Here I go again. I'm going back to these products. Well, this is the iPad I have, okay? And there's so many software limitations here, but I still think the potential and the hardware is necessary. But, you know, the fact that there's no function keys on this thing or volume or display settings, if they would let you have customizable shortcuts, you know, what if Siri shortcuts was integrated into the Magic Keyboard case or any third-party keyboard you guys use with your iPad? It doesn't have to just be this one, and you could customize shortcuts as long as they're not set to other things via the settings app, so you can have display brightness be, you know, option minus or option plus, or volume be command minus or command plus. If you're on the home screen and you're not in an app that would ordinarily use command minus or plus, just letting there be kind of like unlimited options when it comes to customization with shortcuts. And people really, really enjoyed what Apple did with Siri shortcuts and all these little quick commands you can add and things like that. So if they brought that to things like iPad keyboard support, then I think a lot of people would be happy with it, and they could customize it to, you know, command P opens a certain program and you can command whatever letter you want to specifically access certain things on the iPad that no one else can do, but you can because you have that customization. So that would just add a ton more flexibility, in my opinion, and honestly, that's what iPadOS really needs right now. I feel like all the hardware for a successful laptop replacement for more and more people, it's already there, and I know it's replaced laptops for a ton of people already, but closing that gap, I think, is going to be really, really possible with the next generation of iPadOS. And out of all the operating systems they talk about on stage in June, iPadOS is probably the one I have the most interest in. When it comes to everything else, I don't know, watchOS, what can you do with that? iOS 14, there's a bunch of jailbreak stuff I'm sure you guys want, but I'm really happy with it on my phone. There's not much I would change. Who knows? If I think of something, I'll make a video about it. But if I don't make a video on it, it's because I couldn't come up with much. But either way, let me know what you guys would like to see brought to iPadOS this year by hitting me up over on Twitter, joining my Discord. We can chat more about it there. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I'm sorry if you thought Santa was real. But hey, don't be so mad about that, because it means that the presents you have gotten over the years were just from people you love, and not just a fictional character that was made up to sell merchandise and commercials and stuff like that. Go thank the people that pretended to be Santa for you. This is Off Topic. I'll see you guys in the next one.